Hi, everybody. Welcome in for another podcast episode. What we're doing today is a video recap of the most viewed video on my channel from almost 3 years ago, or no, yeah, I think 3 years ago at this point, or maybe 3 years ago in the summer, but it's Whetstone Sharpening Mistakes most people make. And it's kind of interesting as we were tooling around and looking at kind of some of the analytics behind this video, and then also reflecting on where the channel was and where I was when this kind of video was created. And it's honestly weird to me that this is the most viewed video. It has, I think, double any other video that is on the channel.
8 million views.
Yeah, crazy. And it's like a video about whetstone sharpening your knife at home. And I don't think 8 million people are actually interested in that. If I had to guess.
Yeah, and it also came out way before you blew up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like several months before.
Yeah, so this video was released May 20th, I think 2020. Yeah, so there's this graph for this video. This is the first 30 days. So at this time, I think I had 15 to 20,000 subscribers. So this was made when I was still living back at my parents' house, had been there for, I moved back in for I think I was probably there for 10 months. And then that next month, in June, I actually left for California. Then this is when the channel took off. This video was part of it, actually, but I didn't really realize that until we kind of looked at this video. So what you're looking at is the first 30 days that this video went live. And as you can see, I made a little note on this that it had 2,000 views in the first 24 hours. So that is crazy to think about in terms of how videos go now. Because now it's like, there's 2K views in the first first minute of a video. And I remember like getting 2K views for me at this time in the first 24 hours, that was really good. And then over time, I think I probably had one other video with over like 100,000 views. And it might've been another knife sharpening one I made a long time ago that actually was part of the reason I made this one. So in that old knife sharpening video, it was a literal tutorial about me sharpening a knife, but it was like 25 minutes long because I showed the entire process. So, and that video did fairly well. I think it had like 100,000 views. So that's why I decided to make this one. And it was just a quicker option where it's like basic sharpening mistakes that I had personally kind of made and, wanted to share to help people. But looking at it in the first 30 days, 160,000 views and, gaining almost like 1,000 subscribers, like that was massive at the time. But then it did tail off for a long time. And then we were kind of looking at it. It's like a viral video, but it has these weird spikes. And it's actually, I think, more the evergreen nature of it that really has helped this video get to 8 million views. Like it's not necessarily, I think the max views it got in a day was around 60,000. But over time, it's gotten maybe at least 5,000 views a day for the past 3 years at this point.
Yeah, I think the 60,000 views in the day went viral like randomly summer 21 or 22 maybe.
Yeah.
It was like all of a sudden in July, 60,000 views, 50,000 views, 45,000 views, all in the span of a few days. And then trickle back down to 5,000 views on average a day. And then all of a sudden maybe another 20,000, 25,000.
Yeah, it's a weird video. Like looking at the graph of the analytics, it's just like, I'm like, why? There's all these random spikes throughout the year. So it's a really weird kind of anomaly video, it feels like.
What about the video do you think makes it such an evergreen piece of content and a video that people keep going back to?
Yeah, I think the big thing is it really did solve a problem. So at the time because I personally was trying to learn about sharpening and how to sharpen my knives at home. And the process that I took was very kind of annoying and there wasn't great information out there. There was some YouTube videos, but it was a lot of like hunting knife videos that they were, sharpening, or like a lot of people use like sharpening systems. I ended up buying a book that I forget what that book's called, but that one was a really good book that actually like went into a little bit more like what's knife metals, what's like a burr, what angle are you trying to sharpen a knife at, and all this stuff. But for me, it took a long time to fully grasp what I was doing. And just the videos out there, I feel like weren't very user-friendly or very approachable. And that was from my personal experience that I kind of realized that. So with this video, I wanted to kind of make a quick, approachable video and give you some mistakes and like give you the high level of things that you can do to get a better video. So, or a better and sharper knife, because it's something that's very important in the kitchen. And I know that's a problem for just about everybody, is having a dull knife. And then once you cut with a sharp knife for the first time, it is life-changing. So that, and then, yeah, I think the title worked fairly well because it was like sharpening mistakes that a lot of people make, because I think it's everyone makes mistakes when they first start. I made countless ones. And then in the hook of the video, I kind of told a story a little bit with like, you know, you've watched all these videos, you've read all these articles, you've looked at the book, and then you sit down and actually go, and then it's still dull. Because that happens with, I feel like, everyone who tries to sharpen a knife for the first time. They're like, oh, I'm doing it. And then they're like, wait, it's not sharp. Because that was something that I experienced. So I tried to relate that experience in the video and then continue it on them from there and give you like 6 nuggets of information that hopefully you're able to get something that, you know, is sharper than what you started with.
Are there any similar videos to this sharpening video that you think you'll make in the future related to techniques?
Yeah, I think like looking back on this video, I feel like I could maybe start doing some more in this style, like quick hitters around, because I've done like sandwich, you know, mistakes or like things that, you know, make your salads better. But yeah, I feel like there are a lot of base categories like around how to deep fry better. I've done videos like that. But in the future, yeah, I mean, maybe we do some videos on like knife chopping, or and not even necessarily mistakes, but just like ways that you can maybe chop and be more efficient with how you're chopping your vegetables when you're throwing scraps away, and just making the process a little bit better. Because I feel like knife skills and kind of cutting is a pain point for a lot of people, where they're like, oh, I don't want to cut all these like onions and carrots and everything.
Right.
Or they may think it's a little bit more of it takes longer than it actually does. For me, like, I love prepping vegetables. I don't know. It's like a very enjoyable part of the cooking process for me, but I don't think that's a common thing for a lot of people.
Do you think it's the dull knife that makes it not
I think that's the start.
enjoyable? Yeah.
I think that's the start of a lot of problems is the start. Cause like once you feel that clean swipe through, it's like, oh, that was fun, you know?
Yeah. How often do you sharpen your knives? And I'm sure, you have a lot of knives, but.
Yeah. So there's a couple different things. I mean, I mostly have some like higher end knives that have different metals. So they have a little bit significantly better edge retention. So I don't really have to do like a full sharpening. You know, I do a full sharpening maybe once a year, and I'm talking like you're going to like 1,000 grit Whetstone, which not going to explain the whole thing now, but most of what I do is actually just little maintenance on a high grit Whetstone. Is like 5,000 grit. And I'm talking like a couple minutes, 2 or 3 minutes on one on each side, and just kind of bring it back up a little bit. And with those kind of nicer knives, that really is one of the big benefits. Like you can get a $15 knife really, really sharp and have similar performance to like a $150 knife. But the issue is, and really kind of, in my opinion, what you pay for is that $15 knife is going to dull much quicker, and it's usually a weaker metal. So it can bend easier depending on what you're cutting, or just in your day-to-day use, it's going to dull faster than, those higher end knives with higher like Rockwell hardness, and just depending on the type of metals actually in the blade. That for me is kind of more what you're paying for, not necessarily like the absolute sharpness of the knife. Because like I said, you can get a very cheap knife very sharp. You can get a very long time, and kind of like maybe that $40 range is going to be fine for it's going to be fine for everyone. Like I could use a $40 knife, is zero issue. A Top Chef could use 1, 2, and then like the most basic version. I think the sweet spot might be kind of in like the $80 to $100 range. And you have to make sure you find the right steel though, because there are a lot of knives in those ranges that are using the same cheap steels as like a $40 knife. So like that's a tricky pain point. Like you have to kind of know what you're looking for in that range. So for me, like a first nice knife is like $80 to $100, but specifically you need to look for a certain steel. Like VG10's a really good one. Typically, like you can find VG10 that are above that $100, you know, $150, because it's a tough like thing to navigate as a consumer, I feel like. And then if you're gonna splurge on a knife, I feel like top end, like performance kind of taps out. And I'm talking performance in terms of like the sharpness, how long it holds its edge, or its like resistance to dulling or chipping and things. There's a couple different metrics you could look at performance. I think it kind of taps out around like 200, 250 in terms of like 210 to 240 millimeters, which is like 8 to 10 inch chef knife. I think it kind of taps out there. I feel like once you get above 200 to 250, 300, you're starting to pay more for the design, the style, maybe the brand or whatever. Though that's definitely it's definitely a nuanced discussion, I feel like.
I just thought of this now. You've done ingredient deep dives, but a tool deep dive would be something that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Almost like there's probably certainly buyer's guides for knives, but I wonder if there's a way that you can kind of blend the food science videos that you do with equipment in some way.
Yeah.
I feel like that could apply to knives or other things.
Yeah, I feel like
maybe that is just a buyer's guide.
Yeah, it kind of is a buyer's guide, but using like what you're looking for because like I feel like every product out there, there's a mix between like performance, marketing, is like what you're paying for a little bit, or like the processes, or like there's the raw material cost. Sure, there's how those raw materials are like processed, and then there's also like how are we selling this thing? So that's always a tough thing to navigate as a consumer. I think America's Test Kitchen does like a pretty good job with their buying guides and like looking at a full range of knives or pans and running it through like pretty thoroughly. Because that is like a big job to do if you're actually looking at products, and like you're not just evaluating, you know, how to cook a singular dish in it, but you need to look at like durability, and there's usually a lot more factors. I think for knives we could do one kind of breaking down like what to look for, what not to look for, and like talking about the performance. But for other like pots, pans, different carbon steels, like there's really a lot of testing that you could technically do, and it might not matter that much. I don't know. It's definitely a tough thing to test, because I mean, with that America's Test Kitchen, they have a whole team of people who are like trying it out and, you know, getting multiple responses from everyone in their testing, which is like pretty hard to replicate.
Right. For someone that doesn't have a lot of kitchen appliances, you do have a lot of knives. Is that a hobby thing? Can you talk to us about your current knife lineup?
Yeah. I would say, I don't have a lot of appliances. I would say I have way more knives than the average person, but I'm also not on knife enthusiast level where they have like, I think once you get above 10 to like 15, 20, like then you're like, oh, this is like a very hobby. For me, I'm like right in the middle where it's like, there are definitely some knives that I don't need, but I think I have like a main 6 if I'm thinking about. So I have a petty knife, which is carbon steel, just because it's like a smaller style. I think it's like 160 millimeters. I have a knife that's a Honesuki, which is like a Japanese poultry deboning knife. So it's single beveled on one side. More of a specialty knife, definitely not something you need. And then I have 2 kind of chef's knives, or really Japanese, you know, Gyuto chef knives. One's 240 millimeter, which is like the very long one, which I didn't know I was going to love a knife that long. It's so nice for cutting up vegetables. And then the 210 is the all around one that I think is like great for just like every home cook. It's kind of like an 80. I think it's like 80. When I bought it, I think it was 80. I think now it's like $90, $95 maybe. And then I have Nakiri, which is another vegetable knife, but also used, and it's like one that was gifted to me by my dad for my birthday a couple years ago. So that one's like a very fun knife to use. Again, really good for like vegetables or like getting super thin. Like that blade is so thin, it's crazy. And then there's a Chinese cleaver, which is pretty similar to the Nakiri. Like they kind of serve a fairly similar role. The Cleaver is a much taller blade height wise, but as far as like it's kind of the square shapes, they work the same. So those are like the main 6 I have. But realistically, you need one chef's knife and you're good to go.
We should put up a poll of over under, see if people can guess what that line would be for how many knives he has.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Some of the top comments are funny. Never a dull moment with this guy.
Oh, that dad joke just hit it perfectly. It works though. I'm sure that did very well though, like with people.
I think it's the top comment.
Yeah,
the reigning comment.
Yeah, I think if
Gary.
you have to get in early on the comment, right? And if you put a little wit to it, it's just going to rise.
Yeah,
what's
you get those
secret?
internet points.
Yeah, what is this? Early on in your videos, the secret was that. Well, the pickled onions report I always thought was hilarious. He
doesn't.
Is that account still around?
No, I remember. That is some lore
funny.
right there. It was really funny. That's some good channel lore right there. So there was a guy who he made like the pickled onion report and would comment every timestamp where I used either pickled onions or mayo in the video, which was like most videos like happen all the time. And then at some point, I think he mentioned that he stopped or whatever. But yeah, it would be nice to see a comment from him pop up. I would thoroughly enjoy that. So if you're out there, the pickled onion report guy, drop a comment on one of the future videos because I'd get a huge kick out of it.
I mean, you became the pickled onions guy of the internet. It sure seems like
it really did. Yeah, like that is really what like I got known for I feel like a full year almost, and then now we've kind of switched out of that phase, but I still use pickled onions a lot, but like I feel like I used to be known as like the pickled onion guy.
Yeah, there was another comment that I think I'm going to use, and it's related to how you use the scale for sort of aligning your pressure. And it was, if you're not sure of the pressure, just put the stone on the scale, and as you sharpen, you can see it as you go. So I think in the video you have the scale next to the stone, right? So then you're like kind of getting the feeling on the scale, and then you move to the stone. I think this guy's just suggesting putting the stone on the scale and then go.
Yeah, that would, depending on what your scale looks like, I guess that would work. Obviously, it depends on the style of scale. Like if it's a circular one, that might be a little weird or tough. But if you have like a flat one that can kind of support most of the stone without like falling off or getting uneven, because there's one scale that you could definitely, that I've owned in the past, you could definitely do that with. Yeah, that's a good point. I think the big thing is just getting the feel. So whichever way like works best for you, whether it's like just putting pressure on the stone, or like putting the knife on the scale or putting the stone on the scale, like both can work.
Do you have any tips for feeling the burr?
Yeah, it's a tough thing. Like
it's early on, that was probably, I definitely, the pressure tip was awesome. I didn't realize how much pressure I had to apply, but still definitely early on feeling the burr. I was like, am I feeling the burr? I was like, I don't know, maybe there's a lip that I can kind of feel.
Yeah. And that's the tough thing with, I'd say, cheaper knives are a little bit harder because it kind of rolls a little bit more and maybe doesn't give you as like a defined burr as like one of the, like certain steels. Like it's so obvious. Like you can almost like like if you like rub your like fingernail, like almost like you can like feel it like kind of grab for a second. So like that's one way to check. But yeah, again, it depends a lot on the knife. Like that's why I think it is a little bit harder to sharpen some of those like the softer steels that are in like that cheaper range compared to some of the harder steels. That's like another. But yeah, I mean, once you start feeling it and like understanding it, it makes sense. But yeah, it's it normally is like pretty small. You can like barely feel it.
Do you strop after sharpening?
There was some point where I messed around with it, and like I did have a leather strop with like a high grit compound on it. And then I kind of just stopped. I don't think I think you get more performance, but I don't think it's like really, it's not like the bigger difference is like moving from like 1,000 grit stone to like your, 5,000. I think once you get like beyond your high grit stone, like there's kind of diminishing returns over time. They definitely works. Or some people even just like will do maintenance on the strop. But for me, I just use a high grit stone. That's like plenty of performance for me. But yeah, you can definitely get more performance with stropping and like a multi or a compound for it. But I just kind of, I don't need like the most sharp knife ever. I just need like acceptable level for me.
Right. What about honing rods? Do you use those?
I used to, but not anymore. I really just use that. Like if I'm doing maintenance, it really is just like on the high grit whetstone. But like ceramic honing rods actually work really, really well. Specifically the ceramic ones. The steel ones work well for softer knives, but if you have like a slightly nicer knife, actually the ceramic honing rods work quite well to kind of realign that blade for a quick little maintenance session to get the blade edge back.
Okay, final thing, we're gonna have Ethan react to the infamous Kendall Jenner cucumber cut.
I'm ready. They like
Pat,
mentioned this earlier.
No, I
You haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I'll pull it up and we'll get your thoughts.
Okay, sounds
on her
good.
knife skills. Okay, so she's at home cutting a cucumber. Here we go.
Oh, what? Why is she doing it from the back? I'm so lost. It just like there's like no. It looks like she has like no confidence in her cuts, but she's literally cutting it with her hand on the back of it. I mean, I guess like she's keeping her hand away from the blade, which is fine. But yeah, that seems very uncomfy to me. I don't even know. Like, I'd be super curious to interview her and be like, what about this feels right to you? Like, what about this feels natural in the way that you're cutting it? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I wonder if she just hadn't cut anything before.
Yeah. But I'm saying like even like anything in kind of like any kind of like as just like motor skills in general, that feels very uncomfortable. Even if I don't even know if I was doing anything like putting my left hand over and like coming underneath with my right hand.
Like
Yeah.
you've like, even if you haven't seen someone chop a cucumber, you've seen someone chop anything, right? And you'd think like naturally, you'd get like partially the way there.
I think what confuses me is the reaching over. Like I could understand if she just had her hand on the far side and was cutting like really far away from it.
Right.
But like the weird over the top grabbing the back of the cucumber and then cutting the front this way rather than just like switching around is just like completely odd to me.
We'll send her your knife skills video.
Yeah, we can give her some tips, and you know, if she wants to cook or cut a little bit faster. But like, yeah, that's weird. That's a weird way to cut a cucumber.
It's okay. She has a private chef.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So I think that'll wrap it up for the little breakdown of our Whetstone Sharpening Mistakes video. Again, pretty interesting video and kind of fun to look back at very old video and actually kind of get some new inspiration for maybe some new topics that we could cover in the future. So if you have some topics that maybe style of videos we do in this style moving forward, would love to hear them. But we will catch you all in the next episode. Hopefully you guys are having a good day. Peace, y'all.